Hello, in this part of this multi-part series of videos, we're going to talk about how to use the HPE Storage PowerShell Toolkit to connect to a 3-PAR, Primera, or An Alletra 9000 style array. With that, let's jump right in. I've got a GitHub site up right now, which is the PowerShell Toolkit, and where we do our design work. So this toolkit is going to be version 3.5. It's on beta right now. And the toolkit will be out shortly. And when it does come out, you will find it on the My Software page inside of HP. And you'll also find it on the PS Gallery. And the way to tell it's gone from beta to the full version is that the code will be digitally signed. Now, with that said, you should be able to see all the work we're doing as we're doing it online. You can also issue bugs directly against this PowerShell toolkit by opening issues against the GitHub site. This way, the actual bugs get to the developers as fast as possible. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the old toolkit. So the existing HPE Storage PowerShell Toolkit version 3.1, I've got loaded right now. Now, if we're going to run the old toolkit, we've got to actually have a few prerequisites in place. The first one is we should download and install the POSH SSH module, which is used to do SSH-type connectivity to the array. But I should note that when you use the 3-PAR type, the old 3-PAR method of connecting, you actually have to do two different commandlets, because there are two different types of commands. And when I say that, what I mean is if I do a get-module, or get-commands, -module, you'll see there's a large number of commandlets. The problem is that some of these commandlets require the API connectivity method, while other commandlets require the CLI type method. And of course, you don't know this unless you actually attach both. So you generally want to connect in both methods at the same time. Additionally, some of these, it's very hard to determine. The other major problem we have with the existing toolkit is that it doesn't follow the standard noun-verb nomenclature that PowerShell expects for third-party toolkits. And what I mean by that is, the normal method is use verb, dash, and then some vendor designate, and then the actual noun that you're going to use. As an example, there's a command in this toolkit called getHost, or getSpare, or getNode. Those are all commands that already exist inside the Windows operating system. So when this toolkit gets loaded, those commands actually fall by the wayside, and we can no longer use them until this toolkit is unloaded. So we've actually normalized all the commandlets to follow a standard. Now, one of the difficult parts is, if you haven't been using this toolkit before, is to figure out how you're supposed to connect. Normally, people use a connect command to connect. On these toolkits, however, they use a new command. So in fact, the commandlet we want to run to connect to the SSH is going to be new-posh command. So new posh SSH connection, and we have to put the username and the password in, and the array IP address. And of course, the old toolkit, if you didn't have POSH installed, it would try and download it for you and automatically use it. This has been changed to the new platform. The new platform will not automatically down PowerShell modules not written by us as a security feature. And now I must type in my password. And I've now logged in via SSH. So some of these commands will work, but others won't. To make all of them work, I need to do a new-WS API connection in the exact same way. So now I'm connected via SSH and via CLI, or I should say SSH and via API. So now I'm actually able to run all of my commands. So I can run commands like get VV, in which case you'll see a list of my virtual volumes. Now, of course, that doesn't give it to you in table format, so I can actually pipe that to format-table. And of course, too many of them are going to roll by. So let's go ahead and select -object and only select the first 10. But you can see that the first 10 volumes, virtual volumes, look like this. Now let's go ahead and take a look and see what that looks like with oh, I should also note that's what happens when you run getvv. There's a different command included called getvv _WSAPI, which returns the exact same information, well, I should say, returns a different set of information on the exact same volumes. So again, there's too many to list, but I can do the exact same trick I worked with before. Again, let's remind you what the old command looked like, and now let's do the one using WSAPI. You'll see there are different fields involved. So name is still there. CPG is different. All of the name fields have been changed. And in fact, if I run this and do format list and only select one, we can see, or I meant to select one, we can see what a single object looks like. You can see there's a lot of information inside of each of these objects. Now with that said, let's go ahead and look at the new toolkit. The new toolkit is far easier to use. And one of the reasons is because now if I want to use a connectivity, I say get-command-module HPE Storage. And notice there's only a few connectivity commands. And that's because we didn't want to inundate people with all the commands they could possibly run once they've connected until they connect. And because of the fact that this new toolkit supports Nimble and MSA and Alletra 6000, we don't want to show people commands that are not valid for their platforms. So now I want to run connect-HPE SAN. Put in the IP address, put in the array type. It asks for a user if I don't give it a credential. Now notice I did not put in SAN user because I'm using a standard credential object that all PowerShell users are familiar with. And you'll notice that when I run this connectivity command, I typed in the wrong password. When I run this connectivity command, it will actually attempt to connect via SSH and via WSAPI at the same time. So now all the commands work. More importantly, all the commands have been modified. If I do a get command, or if I do a get module, you will see I have a couple new modules loaded. So before, I was using the HPE Storage module as my go-to for all my commands. Now I've actually separated them out into an Alletra 9000 Primera and 3PAR, the API commandlets, and the CLI commandlets. The reason that's important is if API is not running on your array, then I don't want to show you all the API commandlets you're not able to run. And if CLI is not running on your, if I can't do an SSH connectivity because you don't have the posh SSH installed, I don't want to show you commands that only work with CLI. So we've separated these out. Now, it's kind of a pain to be able to have to look at two different places to get the commands. Well, that's nice too, because what we've done is we've modified the verb in such a way. Now, everything is preceded with the prefix A9. So now, if I want to do a get-VV, that's no longer a command here. It's get A9 VV. And in fact, the get A9 VV, notice before I had the standard command and then I had a WSAPI version of the command. Now, it's one command and I can either choose to use an API or use an SSH. So if I run the use SSH, the command operates just as it did before, or I can use the API and force the API information. So again, it's a lot easier to use. We don't have command collision. It's easier to identify all my commands. Now, what do I do if I want to see all the commands available to me? I can do get command *-A9*. By using wildcards, I can see every command that's available to me. And you'll notice that all the commandlets are prefixed with an A9. This ensures I will not conflict with anything else. This also makes it very easy to convert over to a Nimble Storage, which is an Alletra 6000, because all those commands start with an A6. And if you're using an MSA, all those commands start with an MSA. So it's very easy to separate these commands out. Now, if I do a get-help on get-A9VV, you can see that all my parameters listed out. And if I do a -examples, you can see multiple different examples of how that command can be run. Now, when I ran that help, you'll notice that if I'm using the API, certain parameters are available to me, like provisioning type. If I'm running through the API doesn't have, or I'm sorry, if I'm running through the SSH doesn't have the ability to search by provisioning type. So that means that by choosing what type of method I want to connect to, I may have different parameters that are valid or not valid. With that said, the new toolkit should be a lot easier to read. It will require a little bit of retooling if you've got older scripts. However, the new toolkit should be more predictable and more easily integratable with other scripts that involve other parts of your infrastructure. With that said, you should be able to find information about this at the GitHub site. And again, if you run into issues, please post issues directly against that GitHub site, and we'll fix them as quickly as possible. Thank you for your time.